Hey, hey, hey! Welcome back to another episode of the Musician's Personal Development Podcast. I am CC Bass.
This is Wil Cameron.
And we are two seasoned musicians here to bring you the best musician tips to help you become your best musician self. Hey,
right.
So Wil, what are we talking about today?
I'm glad you should ask that. We are actually going to talk about your book. The title of that book is Play Confidently. And you can tell us more about it later because I know it talks about quieting your inner critic, which is something we deal with these sessions. So,
yeah, okay, that's fun. But before we get into it, what's going on with your background?
What, this little thing? Well, I'm not in a phone booth or anything. I'm kind of like in an alternate location, so I wasn't evicted or anything. The W was on vacation, so it's a little bit boomy and stuff in here. So, but it's all good. It's intentional. So,
okay.
But I appreciate you checking to make sure I wasn't homeless or something. So.
Absolutely.
So tell me. Let's jump right into this book because I know there are many people who don't know that you've written a book. Right. And actually, this podcast is leveraging off of the book. So, yeah. Yes. So, do you remember? A few years ago? I remember when I got my copy of the book. Do you remember when I purchased a book from you, an extra book? Do you recall that at all?
Actually, I do. I recall that. I think we were like on a jam session together, and don't quote me on it, but I think we were at a jam session together.
Yes.
And you were talking about getting a book for another person, for someone else too.
And you signed the book because you asked, and what's his name? Remember? And I told you his name, and you signed it and everything. So the book was for my friend Alden, and Alden is a music teacher, and he does this for the school system, which I admire a ton because he's a teacher. And two, that he's a music teacher. I had very fond moments and thoughts about my music teacher. So Alden, who was a dynamite guitarist, he would he was nervous. He would become intimidated. He told me at one point he was intimidated playing with me because he felt like I was more proficient than he was. I don't believe that for a moment. So I gave him that book as a gift, and he was quite touched by the book, and I hopefully he has shared the content of that book with his friends and stuff. But why don't you tell us what the book is about? So let's start with that.
Okay, well, basically, Playing Confidently, that's really kind of a play on words. So it's geared towards musicians, but it's essentially about having confidence in the playing and quieting the inner critic, that inner voice that tells us that's critical of what we do, and that kind of prevents us from growing. And how I got here, if you haven't already heard my story, or if you haven't read the book, essentially, I had this whole career in music about a lifetime ago. I started off by playing in the Navy band, and playing with various bands on the West Coast, even when I got out of the Navy. And I learned relatively early that I actually had some nervous issues and some social anxiety with playing on the gigs and so forth. Actually, it wasn't so much the actual playing of the gig; it was the actually interacting with people. So I had definitely some social anxieties, and it was very crippling. And so I ended up walking away from music for 8 years, and I realized that it wasn't just in a music setting that I had this anxiety. I had it in other places too. It just became very apparent when I walked away from music. So anyway, long story short, I did a lot of self-development, reflecting, and personal developments, and I gained some tools along the way that about 8 years later, when the dust had settled, because I had done the work, then the dream of wanting to play music again came back. And so I always said that when I left music years ago, that I would never go back to performing music. If I were to come back to music, it would be behind the scenes. But now here I am today. All I want to do is play in front of people and play with people. I love connecting with people. I don't even want, recording is fine and everything, but I really want that connection. So how does somebody who has that social anxiety come from that place that's crippling to now wanting to do nothing but performing? And so I'm sharing tools of how I do that and how I got to that point, and managing that social anxiety and those fears. And I'm providing that in this book. And so that's really what this is about. And I apply these tools every day. Even the advice I'm giving here on the podcast, I'm applying them every day. And that's what helps keep those fears at bay.
As we talked about before, we our audience primarily are musicians, but the things that we're using, these are tools that people use in day-to-day life at work and even around your family, just as far as some of the organizational stuff. So exactly, I'm still kind of blown away with the 8 years of non-playing and how you can go away for so long and everything. So when you're getting all this together, what actually inspired you to put this in the form of a book or to write a book? That's a huge undertaking. Was that part of the getting back process for you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the whole thing about walking away from 8 years, because I will say this. When I was in the Navy, I had I had my musicians friends, and it was we had this attitude like it was the musicians against the world, and musicians were it, and anybody who would say like, yeah, I ended up walking away from music. I used to play music, but I don't play music now. And then we would judge them. We would say, that means he couldn't hang. He couldn't hang as a musician. But then it happened to me. And so, I became disillusioned, and that was a wake-up call for me to figure out what was going on. And I grew up pretty quick. So basically, when I came back into playing music and I was getting my footing, this was about 10 years ago when I came back into it. And, I realized I love this playing and performing and everything, but I figured that, there's got to be more. I'm certainly meant for more than just playing. There's got to be more to this, but I don't necessarily want to teach. Right. But, I went through this whole 8-year period of this growth and everything. And I noticed that, things about like fear as musicians, people don't talk about. So if you think about it, like when you go into a music store or, in any kind of bookstore, you find books on how to play scales, or you find biographies on like famous musicians, but never material on things that bother us the most, that bother a lot of people, which is anxiety, like performance jitters, anything that's related to like personal growth that can actually take you to the next level. It's not all about playing notes. It's all what I like to call a 360 degree, personal, professional, all these different things that that factor into becoming your best musician self.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of deep. The experts actually, it's very similar. The experts say that when people have a change in their ideology, it's something that sometimes turns them into an entirely different person. And one thing that they usually have in common is they want to either network with other like-minded people, or they need to talk about or express whatever it is. So it's just amazing how all of that kind of rolled through. And I've read through most of the book, but if you had to pick one, no more than two key points you wanted to leave people with the book, let's say people are thinking about the book, and what would you want them to take away from that?
Well, I would say, playing music, anybody can play music. Okay, so you've probably heard me say it in a previous episode. As long as you're physically capable, you can play music. It's a lot about muscle memory. When it comes to like being successful and hitting the goals that you want to hit, I would say that there's no one path to success. I look at this as like a tree branch. There's maybe the bar is here for you, and so everybody's got all these different branches out. So on their path, twists and turns of how they got to where they are. No one person's journey is the same. So you can write your story. If you struggle with any kind of anxiety or so forth that you feel that might be holding you back, you're not alone. There's so many of us out there, but I would say that it's all not real, and a lot of times people don't even notice what you're going through, and it's really all within you. So that's what I would say. One path to success, and you're not alone out there, but it is so important to recognize what you have and to chip away at it.
Mm-hmm. I think people need to hear that, especially as it pertains to, and again, we're not clinicians, but any type of mental health issue or some just the way they feel about stuff. I mean, people need to understand that they're not alone, and there's so many aspects. There's obviously the musical aspect of playing your instrument, but there are all these other emotional things that go into playing the music, and we start to think about how do we feel about our own music? How do other people feel about our music? And you can get these just really negative and uncontrollable feelings inside of you that sometimes dissuade you from playing. And it's totally unnecessary, but people really need to hear that. That's a huge undertaking. I can't imagine. I can imagine you writing a book, but I can't imagine me personally writing a book, especially to the level that you've done. Your book is very well done, if I must say so myself.
Oh, well, thank you.
What on earth is next on your agenda? I mean, what else are you going to get into?
Well, hey, we're doing something right now, right? We're putting together a podcast. So really, my mission, I have a higher purpose in life, and that's to help billions of musicians all over the globe get more confident and improve their performance. That's what my goal is. And I talk to a lot of people. This is not about being the best musician in the world, because I talk to many advanced musicians who struggle with some kind of anxiety, and you don't have to have. Yeah, and you don't have to have anxiety to relate to this book. And you don't have to be a musician to relate to this book. I've had people that are not musicians that have picked up tips. And it's not all about social anxiety, too. I just let you know that. But it really more about personal development and things that you can put into your toolbox every day to get you to where you need to go. So for me, it's all about platforms in reaching various people. So it's one thing to write a book, but partnering with you, Wil, on this podcast is a great thing, because I can reach a wider audience, and that's what this is about. Looking for stages where I can actually talk to more people, and bring people together that to have these kinds of conversations. Right now I'm doing more of the one-on-one talking with people, out on gigs and so forth, and showing up on their gigs and just having that conversation. But finding platforms to get the word out is really where my true passion is.
Yeah,
I still playing, because I love to play.
And I was just about to say that, and it's interesting the way that you kind of framed all of that, because the music typically gives people a certain amount of joy, and they're so happy they're listening to the music. And anybody who's been around you know that. I mean, you are a performer. I mean, in every sense of the word, you cause people, just by watching you sometimes, when you and I are playing together, I mean, it's just madness. We start feeding off each other and stuff. So,
isn't that fun?
It is. And so what a better thing to share. You're thinking, wow, we shouldn't be having this much fun without getting everybody should be able to do this, right?
Right, exactly.
And I remember the conversation. We were sitting there in that parking lot, and we were kind of talking about, why don't we do this? We were kicking it around, and we're doing it, and it's amazing. We're two regular people. We're like, who would have ever thought, right? But I think this is great. This is great. I am so proud that you've like done so much that you've done so far, and you never really know when you write a book or when you create a video or something like that, you have no idea where it's going to go, and you never really know who you touch or who that product touches. So thank you for doing that. So for those who are watching right now, hypothetically, if they wanted to buy like about 1 trillion copies of it, where would they do that, or how do they go about doing that?
Well, you can find it on Amazon. Just type
Great.
in "Play Confidently, Quiet Your Inner Critic," and it's by me, CC Wilson. That's the name of the book. And you can also go to my website. It's ccbassguitar.com, and you could find me there. And you could also find out where I'm playing and so forth. What I really want to draw people's attention to as well, please feel free to reach out to me. If I'm on a gig, you see me on a gig, or show up on your gig, feel free to talk to me, because I want to hear your story. I love to hear people's story. Even if you're struggling with something, let's talk, because that's what this whole thing is about. Let's talk about it. I also want to say that we're doing this podcast here, and it's really a video podcast. Wil and I could have easily made the decision that we're just going to do an audio podcast, but I think that being on camera, there's nothing like looking into the eyes of someone's soul. So I made the decision, to push through any kind of fear and to show up on camera, because that's what it's really about. And,
Right.
It's forcing us to show up every time, and that's what I love, because it's all about getting better.
And it's contemporary, and you know what? And it's what people do now. It's like, we're not doing 8 tracks in cassette tapes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that stuff, but
Right.
we're, this is appropriate for the time, and the commitment to doing this is like very important to both of us. And I really hope everybody enjoys this. I hope they enjoy the podcasts. I hope they enjoy the conversations, and both of us would love to hear from you. If you've got an idea or you have a concept that you'd like for us to talk about, get it to us. I mean, we want to know that, and we can evolve these into whatever they turn into. We haven't figured that out. We know what we're talking about as far as what we have planned, but we're pretty fearless when it comes to looking into the future. We'll try something if it looks like it's going to be successful and help people.
Absolutely. And let me just want to give the email address. So it's mpdpodcast@gmail.com. mpdpodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to send us emails. Share your story. If you have some ideas, we look forward to hearing from you.
Right. And the title of the book, one more time, is?
Play Confidently, Quiet Your Inner Critic, and you can find it on Amazon.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Did you have anything else?
No, I would say stay tuned, because we have up to the next episodes, because we have definitely a lot more topics to cover that are relatable. One that we have coming up that we're working on is called Connecting with the Audience. And I really love this one, because you know what? I hear a lot of musicians say that, how come the audience is not paying attention? We're playing all this great music, but they're not paying attention. Well, there's a reason for that, and we're going to talk about that.
We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. Okay.
So we'll see everybody next time. Stay tuned.
All right. Take care.
All right.